Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're all praying for Pope Francis, for his health, and so I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about some of his controversial decisions, right? And to shed some light as to what church teaching is on several of the things that have happened. And just, I obviously can't cover all of them, but I'd like to take some of the most famous ones, some of the biggest ones, and shed some light on understanding a lot of the Pope's controversial decisions with church discipline, with dealing with other religions. And so it's important for us to understand what the Catholic dogmas and principles are on many of these controversial decisions, right? So I think one of the big ones is his teaching on communion for the divorced and remarried Catholics, right? I think his document, the apostolical letter, was Amoris Laetitia or something like that in Latin. And so a lot of people saw it as a controversy, that letter, because it particularly was addressed regarding divorced and remarried Catholics. And some people interpreted that document as permitting these individuals to receive communion even if they aren't living in complete chastity, right? So let's talk about Catholic dogma, which is unchangeable. The Church teaches that the Holy Eucharist is the sacrament of unity with God Himself, with Christ, and that one must be in a state of grace to receive it. No matter what the sin is, you have to confess it. You have to be in a state of grace, right? And so Catholic doctrine holds that divorce is actually not possible. Divorce and remarriage without an annulment is considered adultery after Jesus Christ Himself said that. So Catholics in such situations are deemed to be in a state of mortal sin, and therefore they can't receive communion unless they repent, right? And so the papal magisterium, as the vicar of Christ, Pope Francis has the authority to teach on faith and morals, but does not have the power to alter any established dogma, right? And so this document encourages a pastoral approach to those in challenging marriage situations, with discernment, with mercy, and without changing any of the Church's teachings on marriage. There was no change whatsoever. However, it was a call to be more pastoral and understanding, to use empathy to help these people be led right back onto the right path. So let's talk about Abu Dhabi. That was another controversy. In 2019, Pope Francis signed the document of human fraternity with the Grand Imam in Abu Dhabi with the Muslims, right? Emphasizing interfaith dialogue and peace. So critics claim that this implied that all religions are equally valid paths to salvation, which contradicts Catholic doctrine regarding Christ as the one sole Savior of the world. So let's talk about Catholic dogma. Catholic teaching asserts that salvation is only through Jesus Christ. And so there's actually the doctrine extra ecclesiam nulla salus, which is outside the church, there is no salvation. And Pope Francis clarified that the document promotes dialogue and peaceful coexistence without denying the centrality of Christ as our salvation, right? He talks about religious freedom and dignity. The Holy Catholic Church upholds the dignity and religious freedom of every person, and that's from Second Vatican II, Dignitatis Humanae, the dignity of human peoples. So the Abu Dhabi Declaration encourages peaceful coexistence while affirming that Christ's central role in salvation has remained unchanged. So Christ definitely wants us to be able to live with others in peace regardless, right? And there has been no changes made to that dogma. So another misconception, the Amazon Synod, in the question of the priesthood and female deacons, right? That was a controversy also in 2019. The Amazon Synod, it talked about discussions about married priests as priests in response to the clergy shortages in the Amazon region, referring to the Amazon region, and the potential for female deacon ordination. So Pope Francis did not make any formal changes, but his support for these discussions raised questions about the future direction of the church on celibacy, on not being married, on the role of women, and so of course people all over the internet went crazy. And so the church dogma teaches that the priesthood is reserved for men only, reflecting Christ's choice to make male apostles, the 12 apostles. Celibacy in the Latin Rite is a discipline. It is not a dogma, and it can be adjusted by the Pope at any time. However, the ordination of women to the priesthood is definitely excluded. To the priesthood. So the role of women in the church, while women are excluded from the priesthood, they play vital and important roles in the life of the church, and they always have. Pope Francis has highlighted the importance of women, particularly in service and leadership positions not requiring ordination. Okay? And so nothing has changed, of course, historically. Actually, we are the religion of honoring women. Like we honor Mary. We made such a difference in female rights. So again, that controversy has led to nothing. Okay, Pope Francis's teachings on climate change and social justice is also a big one among conservatives in this country. Pope Francis in 2015 talked about global climate action. He critiques consumerism and promotes more of systems of economy that give value to human dignity and to the environment. And so a lot of people saw that as way too political, right? And so Catholic dogma, Catholic social teaching is grounded in human dignity. It's always been, and the common good of others. And it supports the environment stewardship like that God gave to us since the beginning of creation to take care of the environment. And so the church documents that he made emphasized the moral duty to protect the creation and to care for the poor. So a lot of people, of course, they can put that in whatever box politically they want, but of course that has not changed anything in the same church teaching over the last 2,000 years. So let's talk about Pope Francis's role in mercy. Pope Francis has been the merciful Pope, the Pope of mercy, right? And he emphasized mercy in this more pastoral approach, right? Some have questioned whether his approaches of mercy compromise traditional Catholicism, traditional church teachings on, like I said, divorce, contraception, homosexuality. So again, Pope Francis has not changed a single dogma because he can't. A pope can't change Catholic dogma. And so the Catholic Church teaches that God's mercy is central to the gospel, and it has to be balanced with justice, right? And there's a loving call for people to return to God's grace without changing any moral teachings of the church. So I hope that helps clear up a little bit. Pope Francis always had a "who am I to judge" statement on homosexuality, and so that was very controversial too. I think a lot of people don't like his stance on that. Pope Francis made the remark, "Who am I to judge?" To respond to questions about homosexuality. Some people interpreted that as a shift in the church's stance on same-sex relations, and of course that was not the thing whatsoever. So we're called to love the sinner but not the sin. We can't judge them. So the church teaches that same-sex attraction is not sinful, but homosexuals that act upon it are committing sin, right? So God is using Pope Francis in his pastoral care with the same-sex attraction issue while upholding the traditional teachings on sexual morality. So those people are called to salvation too. I mean, we're not meant to judge them whatsoever. We're meant to call them to a closer relationship with God. Sin is not hitting the mark, and we are not to judge them. Another big controversy was in the Amazon Synod, the Pachamama, right? Indigenous Pachamama statues were displayed in St. Peter's Basilica, supposedly leading to accusations of idolatry. That was huge. I remember that. And so, what is the Catholic dogma on idolatry? The Catholic Church condemns the veneration of idols, and Pope Francis clearly clarified that the statues represented the indigenous culture and not idolatry. The church supports cultural sensitivity, being respectful to other cultures, while remaining faithful to doctrinal teachings. And at the end of the day, the indigenous leader said that was Our Lady of the Amazon. So when the indigenous presented it to Pope Francis, it's Our Lady, it's Mary. That's the way they depict her. It's Our Lady of the Amazon, okay? And so a lot of people said that was the Pachamama. Another big problem was Pope Francis and how he was dealing with the trad cats, with the traditional Latin Mass, and I think a lot of people jumped on him for that, right? So Pope Benedict was seen as more tolerant, supposedly. That's one of the critiques. I think Pope Francis has been more tolerant than any other pope in history with the traditional group, and so he extended them more faculties than any other pope historically about confession and marriage. And so let's talk about how it's the pope's responsibility to preserve liturgical unity, okay? particularly following the reforms of Vatican II. That was, the popes are called to make as much united the church as possible. And so I think everything he did was out of pure love to unite people into the official way of doing the Mass. So Pope Francis, also his doctrine of limited papal infallibility was seen with critique. That Pope Francis's actions undermine traditional views of papal infallibility, particularly his pastoral approaches like divorce, marriage, the LGBTQ rights. And so he is humble, and he took on the name of St. Francis of Assisi. And papal infallibility was defined at the First Vatican Council in 1870. And that applies when popes make solemn doctrinal declarations on faith and morals intended to bind the church. And so Pope Francis's teachings that are more pastoral are not considered infallible at all, as they do not fall under the ex cathedra declarations. And so he's never used infallibility, and so he's very humble in his approach, and he's more pastoral, right? And so I hope that clears up some of the controversial decisions that he made. I know that we're in 2025, and so there's more media than ever, right? And that Pope Francis's papacy was marked by controversy, mostly coming from his pastoral responses, his liturgical practices, wanting to unite the liturgy, his moral teachings, his interfaith relationships. However, it's important and clear to understand that none of these actions within the context of Catholic dogma have changed teachings of the Catholic Church, okay? And so he is addressing the modern world with mercy, humility, and discernment. And the Catholic Church preserves its timeless truths of faith while adapting these more pastoral approaches to meet the needs of the faithful. So Pope Francis's decisions are grounded in the authority of the Church. And I think he is a leader of respect that really authentically lives the gospel, and that he is a image of God's mercy, that he's a prophet of our times, and that he is spreading God's wisdom to our world. And so that we really need to imitate his leadership style. So everybody, God bless, and until my next video.